What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Jack of Gold Games, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a discussion rant about backwards compatibility in video games. I think backwards compatibility is something in video games that could be so much better than it is. Backwards compatibility is a really cool idea that I think started with PlayStation 2, where you could buy a PS2 and you can play all your PS1 games on it, or the Xbox 360 could play a decent amount of the original Xbox games, though there were problems, or the Wii could play GameCube games. It's a really nice feature. I think it's very useful because nobody really wants to have a whole bunch of consoles hooked up and having to switch between all of them just to play a huge library of games. It would be much more convenient to just have a system that plays all of it. Now there is a console that does do that nowadays. Xbox Series X definitely has the best backwards compatibility because it plays a lot of the original Xbox games, it plays Xbox 360 games, it plays Xbox One games, and Series X games, which is nice. Now it doesn't play every single game, because there's a difference with backwards compatibility ways. Like there's two ways of doing it. There's the emulation route where you get games upscaled and you can sell them digitally, which is kind of the way Microsoft's doing it. Or there's the way you put system on a chip, which is like PS2 to play all PS1 games. So there's two different ways of doing it. So because they did it the emulation route, they're not able to get all the games on there because they got to contact the companies and stuff like that. But I think backwards compatibility could be so much better because the thing is, PS2 had really good backwards compatibility. PS3 had pretty good backwards compatibility. I never had a PS3, but it played PS1 and PS2 games, which is cool. But sadly, in the later models, they took out PS2 playback because of the whole $600 thing. Like I said, some of the original Xbox games I read didn't really have good backwards compatibility on their system. Nintendo had good backwards compatibility with Wii to GameCube. I didn't use it that much. But nowadays, if you look at the consoles, Xbox is the only one that's really kind of putting forth some type of effort for backwards compatibility. If you look at PlayStation 5, it's cool that it plays PS4 games, but it doesn't play PS3, it doesn't play PS2, and it doesn't play PS1. You look at Nintendo Switch, it doesn't carry over any of Nintendo's older consoles, and it really sucks, honestly, because it would just be so much nicer and convenient to have a brand new Nintendo system where you bring all your Nintendo games with you, a brand new PlayStation console where you bring all the generations with you, a brand new Xbox system where you bring all the Xbox games with you. I think instead of doing backwards compatibility, they would just rather sell us remasters or remakes of games. They could easily do backwards compatibility. Now, I hear that it's not profitable for them, and I think part of that is because they can just sell remasters. Like, why would they give you backwards compatibility if they could just sell you all the remasters? But then again, they'll remaster a game when it's already backwards compatible, which is strange as well. Like some of the PS4 titles that are backwards compatible with PS5, but then they still get a remaster in PS5. But I think backwards compatibility could be so much better because it is really annoying and inconvenient where if you want to go back and play PS2 games or certain Xbox 360 games or just certain old consoles, you have to get the system or make sure you have it. You got to hook it up and you got to get all that set up just to play it. You can't just take a PS2 game and put it into a PS4, or take a PS2 game and put it into a PS5, or take any old Nintendo game and put it into a Switch. Now, there are some games that are available digitally that you can get, but not all the games are there. And there's a whole issue with digital where sometimes it's not always available or it gets taken down. And really, the best way to play older games and have them preserved is emulation. So, thanks to the people on PC, as well as people that have found it, made it possible on modded consoles, I think that stuff is really cool. Emulation, I definitely support because it's a way to preserve games. That is the best way to play older games. There are some issues, but you can upscale games and stuff like that. And I've played a few games with emulation. Silent Hill 1 on emulation is amazing. It looks great. It looks much better than the PS1 version. Silent Hill Origins, the PSP emulator, is so much better than the original I saw on YouTube. And it's a good replacement because these companies so far are just not going to get to that point, you know, which I wish they would try to get to that point. If we could have like a new PlayStation system, and I would say I would prefer system on a chip because I think it would be better. Like, yes, it's nice to have, you know, upscaled graphics and stuff like that, but I think I would rather have all the games playable than just half of it playable. It would be nice to have system on a chip where we have a brand new PlayStation console that's system on a chip and it's compatible with PS1 and PS2 and PS3 and PS4. And you can play all your PlayStation console games on there. That way you can have one PlayStation system that does it all. Same thing with Xbox does it all. Same thing with Nintendo does it all. It would be nice to see that one day. I, I would even take them doing this with like screw that. I think this should be a consistent feature with every new console they make. I really wish they would do this more often because I think it's a shame if they don't because so many games get left behind. And out of all three, Microsoft does have the best backwards compatibility comparison wise, but even them, they should have did system on a chip over the emulation because there are 360 games that aren't compatible. I can't play Samurai Warriors 2 or Warriors Roshi 1 and 2 and Dynasty Warriors 6 on the new Xbox systems. It's not possible. And, I think backwards compatibility could be so much better. And I just hate the way it is with the consoles where a lot of games just get left behind. And I hate the argument that some people use where they say, oh, who wants to play old games? I don't buy a new console to play old games. These are the same people that'll line up to buy remakes of old games or buy remasters of old games. If people didn't care about old games, they would not remaster old games. They would not remake old games all the time like they're doing. And even if you're buying a new console to play a new game and that's your honeymoon phase and that's what you're into at the moment, sometimes you like to revisit the past. There's nothing wrong with old games. Every game will eventually get old. Even these new games you're playing on a new console will eventually get old. So I don't get that dumb argument some people make. What's wrong with bringing the old games and just keeping them consistently around? I don't see the problem with that at all. And as it stands, your best bet of backwards compatibility being the best is going to be emulation or a modded console, and that's really your best bet. The only time I wouldn't support modded emulation or, things like that, the only time I wouldn't support it or be for, of course, is if it's a brand new game that developers put out. Then it wouldn't be right because people are playing it for free, the developers ain't getting their money. That's when it's not right. But other than that, all these older games that these companies aren't really trying to preserve and do proper backwards compatibility, and there's certain older games that are being sold for ridiculous prices on eBay and Amazon, and none of the companies are seeing that money. I don't care if those games get emulated or made free ROM versions because those games are not being preserved by the companies. Somebody has to do it. It's got to get done somehow. Personally, like I said, the best way they're going to accomplish this is system on a chip. Best way they'll accomplish it. And if it drives the price of the console up, just make a different version of the console. Like you look at the digital edition. Instead of doing the digital edition of the PS5 and Series X, they should have did some kind of Beast Pro upgrade version. Or instead of the digital edition, this is the backwards compatibility version, where this is the one that has system on a chip that costs a bit more. You know, I just think backwards compatibility is a feature that should be so much better in video games, and I wish it was done a lot better. I know it'd probably be very time consuming because of all the games that exist and all the systems they have to go back to, but they could get it done. And it would be a way to preserve video games. It'd be nice to be able to buy a PS5 and be able to play all PlayStation generation systems. And something else they could do is maybe this would be the emulation route, but another reason that backwards compatibility being increased would be nice is, let's say the old Silent Hill games, right? If somebody, you can't really afford the Silent Hill games, the older ones, because they're very expensive. Let's say backwards compatibility was implemented the way I said, which system on a chip, but they could find a way to maybe mix in the emulation one as well, where, hey, I'm not able to buy Silent Hill 1 for PS1 to play on PS5 if we had our full backwards compatibility, hypothetically. You could sell a cheaper digital version of, that's another reason I like to see more of a better push of backwards compatibility of just all the games because they would be able to give people the option, here's a digital cheap version of all, a lot of these older games that are too expensive to buy. Now, in a perfect world, if we can't get backwards compatibility, just remaster all the old games. Then we can just play all of them on the new consoles. I know that's never going to happen, but You know, a lot of the older games that cost too much, that would be a way for people to be able to even play them. And then it would introduce old games to new audiences as well, you know. Like let's say somebody gets into Resident Evil, because there's a lot of people that got introduced to Resident Evil. If we had full-on backwards compatibility, you would finally be able to play. That's something I never understood. The older Resident Evil games, like RE1 and 2 and 3, the old ones, not the remakes, the original, you can't really play them all at once like that on a PS5 or a Series X, realistically. And let's say somebody got into Resident Evil through one of the newer titles. If they wanted to go back and play some of the older ones on a new system, they wouldn't be able to do that, you know? And that does suck. Remakes are nice. It's cool to get some collections and stuff like that, games getting upscaled, but we need proper backwards compatibility when it comes to video games. So we can bring all these games with us, and it should be a consistent feature on every new system they make. So we can constantly bring these games with us. And if some of the games are too expensive, just give people a cheap digital version. And it would give the consoles a lot more value. It'd be a lot more valuable. Like, oh, nice, we got this system with all this stuff. It'd also be a way to, compete with each other. Nintendo could have some type of Nintendo, say Microsoft, they would compete with each other and try to make their backwards compatibility better than the other person's. I think it would be really nice, honestly. They could find some way to do system on a chip while also implementing digital versions of games that are too expensive. I feel like you'd have a really nice balance. I just want to see some type of effort for it with getting all these games brought forward. If people, let me put it to, so let me put it to you this way. If people that don't make games can make all these emulators and ROMs of all these old games on PC, and they can make it to where you can mod consoles to play these old games, then what's stopping the people that actually make these games, these gaming companies, what's stopping them from actually doing it? They would be able to do it the best because they know the hardware and in and outs in games better than anyone else does. They would be able to absolutely kill it if they did it, if people on PC could do it. So yeah, this is just a video I wanted to make about backwards compatibility, a discussion about how I think it should be done a lot better and they could do just way more with it. And yeah, it's just a feature that's very underused in my opinion. It would just be very nice. And yeah, because like there's certain older games I'd like to try, and it's annoying when a lot of them are only on the old consoles. Like it would just be nice to have it all in one place. That'd be nice. So that's really it for this video. Let me know how you feel about backwards compatibility in the comments below. And yeah, the thing with backwards compatibility is this is a way for games to stay around. People talk about disc rot, that happen with certain games or certain older games digitally that disappear if it's only digitally available. And this would be a way to have video games be around for a very, very long time. So yeah, this is a feature that should be utilized more. But that's it for this video. Peace out.